So, Cavanaugh, Mr. Gray,
Yes, sir.
a.k.a. Cav.
Cav is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me. Well, we're going to lay this out, actually. I'll preempt you a little bit here.
Right.
Yeah, so we always like to talk about the present, right?
Okay.
What do you have going on right now in your life? And then we're going to throw it way back.
Wow.
Because my gift to you is that this is somewhat of a autobiography.
Wow.
I want to capture your life story so that the people, your grandkids, your great grandkids, if they ever want to get to know you a little better, this is the place to go.
Okay, you know what? That is probably as cool of an intro segment as I've heard in a while. As someone that's really big on pictures and photography and capturing moments, I really appreciate that. So if I were to kind of give the in the moment, Greg, of what's happening.
Yes, you've got a lot going on.
A lot going on, but just for people that are seeing me for the first time, for people that I know that will ultimately see this, I just spent 2 years, almost 2 years, hopping on and off of a plane between Chicago and Austin. And so, as you remember, I moved to this wonderful city in the summer of 21, started to get my feet under me. Prior to that, I was an academic adjunct professor in small business management, entrepreneurship, and was helping to run a town of about 50,000 people, which is just a crazy thought. And had an opportunity coming out of the pandemic to participate in a civic scholars program. And what's different about that is that it was this convergence of business and doing good, which has been a part of my DNA since way back, which we'll touch on in a little bit. But got this amazing opportunity through the university I used to teach at, and then life started to change post-pandemically. So moving and kids going away to college and all this other cool stuff. And I didn't think it was an opportunity until I got here and felt like, man, we get a chance to come through this life one time. And my family was super supportive. They knew how much work I had done for this opportunity through teaching, through the civic work. And once we got here, they kind of looked at me and like, yo, you got to do this. You gotta make this happen. And things seamlessly fell into place here. And so I hopped on and off of a plane for 2 years, having dedicated professors, dedicated funds that were directed towards solving an issue that was close to me. And that issue that's close to me is economic equity, meaning that you look across all backgrounds, all communities, and how do you start to level the playing field? So that is the super short answer to me hopping on and off planes. I've only been home for like a month now, which is crazy. Yeah, working in airports, posting up in Chicago, flying back home for soccer games. It has been a crazy ride, but it is a testament not just to me, but to what, forget me, but to what people are capable of. Yeah. And I think people don't realize how powerful and what they have in their tanks and in reserve. And I hope that people ultimately will look at, man, this 50-year-old dude with 2 kids and a wife and marriage and homes, he hopped on and off of a plane. It was a twofold thing too, Greg, because I had a kid going away to school in aerospace engineering. What? Yeah, which is fun. Crazy. And somehow there was a part of me that knew for him to make it in this area that was just foreign to me and anyone that I know. Yeah. He somehow had to see his father getting up every day and grinding out in a whole different way so that he could not be like, yo, my father is doing X. Yeah. I got to. You set the example. Trying to set some type of example. Yeah. And such a pivotal time for your son. He's going off to college, right? Entering the workforce shortly thereafter, if not while in college. Yeah. To your point before about people's capacity, David Goggins said it best, that we're only operating on average at 30% of our capabilities. Wow. 30%. Yeah. And, and when it comes to your story, traditionally, you'd see people as they get older to tame down their schedule a little bit. But you said, no, I'm going to ramp this up. Yeah. Where'd that fire come from? Man, what's cool is that, I think people don't, again, going back to this capacity, I grew up in inner city Chicago. So my story started back, my mom's a teacher in Chicago, retired teacher. My dad was he's a retired fireman, passed away about 3 years ago. And, when you see that every day, like I watched my mom every day, Greg, get up and what I call mold mines in the city of Chicago, which is a beautiful place, but it can be a hard place.
Yeah.
And she loved and got up every day, and there was nothing that stopped her or set her back. I remember waking up one morning, dead of winter in Chicago. And Chicago winters are just brutal. And you can
ice cold.
And you knew how cold it was back in the day, Greg, because before these new heating systems, my great-grandmother had radiators.
Yeah.
And so you knew how cold it was outside by how hard the radiators were knocking. They would knock as they worked.
Serious.
And I woke up that morning during the age of newspapers, and on the cover of the newspaper was my dad. The front page of this newspaper was my father. And what had happened overnight at a tire factory, if I'm not mistaken, because of how rapidly the fire progressed and the material of tires, a tire factory went up in smoke and became a 4-alarm. And my father is on the front page on this ladder that extends to heaven. It looks like fighting with this hose by himself on this and just handling it. And I woke up that morning to see that, and something inside of me was like, that's my pops.
Yeah.
And if that's him, it's in me. And it's just something about growing up in the city around parents who worked really hard, blue collar, a city that was blue collar, and just having to kind of make my way.
Yeah.
It's always been there. And I think it's in there for a lot of people, and they don't realize that all they have to do is flip the switch.
Flip the switch.
Flip the switch.
It's been a common theme for a lot of the social media people that I follow. I changed my social media to remove anything that doesn't really serve me. Like no drama people or no, shallow stuff.
Yeah.
It's things that are intentional. It's almost like I'm reading a book.
Okay.
Right. And a lot of the folks that I look up to on there, they say that same term, flip the switch.
Flip the switch.
Yeah. So I think for anybody listening to that, I think it's important to ask ourselves what that means and how we can do it for ourselves. What switch is it that we want to flip? Right?
Yeah. I think one of the things I was thinking about coming over here is like, I think that I thought about a story years ago. I had moved to D.C. after my wife and I got married. We were away from family and friends for the first time, which was an amazing opportunity as a new couple to figure it out. You're just kind of in that space figuring each other out and growing. But I remember working for an energy company at the time. I knew that I was going to be transitioning into working for myself. It kind of, we all know we're on a particular trajectory or path, and we can kind of feel that thing inside of us going, hey, it's time for a change. It's time to make a switch, do your own thing. And I remember when I made the decision to leave my role in energy as like an sales analyst or something. I forgot the role. But what was interesting the most, Greg, was not what was going on with me. It was the people I looked at. Some of them had faces that were like, can you take me with you? Meaning that, and people I've come across over the years, we have a ton of dreams. We just got a bunch of dreams and things that we want to do. And sometimes we'll let the fear have us take that dream and put it on the shelf. And sometimes we won't come back to it. We think we'll be circling back to it in like a year. 2 years, 2 years becomes 5, 5 becomes 10, and they look up and you're like, where did that thing in me go? And I think there was a part of me that understood when I moved here, and I'm thinking, I'll just let this great opportunity where I have all these resources to address a problem in this unique situation. I'll just wait till I get established in Austin and recycle it. And it's not promised. But it's that fear. I didn't want fear to be something that held me back, even in that situation. And I think for a lot of people, that little nugget of fear keeps us from being and doing amazing things.
2 points on that. Yesterday, I posted an Instagram video of a water buffalo getting chased by a lion.
Oh, wow.
2 of them were getting chased by a male lion.
Yeah.
And the caption was, life starts when fear ends. And you saw the water buffalo go from running away, turning around in the middle of the street and just going directly at the lion. You saw the lion back up, stepping, and it became afraid. It's like, whoa, powerful. And I think that you need to have an awareness of fear first. People lie to themselves. We're good at lying to ourselves. And they say they're not afraid. Where did you get your awareness from of fear?
Wow, that's a good question. So growing up, one of the things I thought about today, you think about people. I have two boys, and I will flip through my phone occasionally. I'll send out these pictures and like, oh my gosh, my dad. If you were to hear my sons, they're like, my father's taking another picture, but they don't realize, as you mentioned, it is capturing this moment that may not even seem relevant to us, but to your kids or to maybe their kids, they have this piece of history of you. And one of the earliest memories that I had as a young kid that was a great memory was, again, my mom is a teacher, and I remember the preschool that I was in. And how I remember the preschool is that old school heads like myself remember Sesame Street had an album on vinyl. So I'm a huge vinyl collector, massive vinyl collector. Huh. And Sesame Street had an album on vinyl, and I can still hear some of the songs. And I remember when life went from this utopic Chicago North Side to my mom being burnt out as an educator, a Black woman in historic Chicago system of education and systems, and just got burnt out. And life, I remember life changing from the utopic to being in an environment where there was real things to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And real life things to be afraid of, and I think that was the first moment at a young age where I kind of remembered, okay, the world is not as safe as you remembered or thought it was. And it gives you, I think I would call it a healthy dose of fear.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Where were you when that happened?
This was Chicago. So my family's primarily, in Chicago. Again, I had the beauty of being raised or being underneath my great-grandmother who lived to be 97. And so I had probably one of the most unique experiences that I can remember of any kid, because I had in my home a piece of history walking around, giving me hugs, telling me stories, cooking dinner. It was one of the most amazing things. And so it always felt like, despite the circumstances that were going on financially with my mom and I, just because it was life, you stop teaching, we got to figure it out. My mom was a real go-getter and kind of a hustler and an inner entrepreneur. But despite everything that was going on, the anchor or the rock that I think is missing a lot these days is my great-grandmother was steadfast.
Yeah. Oh, that's
so much I learned from her is a part of my life right now.
And did you ever have a specific conversation about the Great Depression with her?
You know what? Less so the conversation. She would mention it, but you saw it play out in how she lived. So I think that was something that I didn't realize until I got a little bit older. There was a constant repurposing of things that I never understood as a kid. Like,
the depression mentality. Oh, I can use that for later.
I can use that for later. That was like, well, Grandma, why can't we just toss this in the trash and use something else? And she'd be like, nah, we don't do that. When you live through it, it changes your perspective of things. And she had an amazing perspective of just life and getting through, but she was also one of the smartest individuals I ever met to not go to have any formal training. The woman that could walk into a car dealership, I watched her do it twice and just write a check for a car, owned real estate, made sure people had roofs over their heads. It was amazing.
Dang, she figured a lot out.
She figured a lot of it out, and I wonder how much of figuring out came from passing through that season of life.
Wow, what an example to live with.
Yeah.
That's great. So when it comes to your day-to-day, who do you see? What kind of people do you see?
So in the past couple of years, what I've seen getting established in Austin has been a lot slower because my back and forth from here to Chicago. But what it has looked like primarily has been a big part of my life as a startup advisor working in the space of management and marketing and finances has been around a lot of other business people and tech company kind of things. And so what hasn't changed that much, even though I've been going back and forth, has been a lot of bumping into people at expos who are leading, I think what I call it a new wave of technology is the best way to put it. So anytime we go through these, as you know this, I'm talking to a real estate and business guru. Anytime we go through these downswings, there's always this upward innovation and new stuff, the rose that grows out of the concrete. And so it is fun now watching and bumping into a lot of those companies and those people in different parts of the country. Outside of that, it's been a lot of academic, just being back at the university that I was at. especially having taught there. And so it's kind of a weird environment to go from standing in front and teaching graduate students and helping them to launch and do cool things to now being in a different role, position to kind of sit in the classroom and learn and evolve and keep growing. And so that was really cool.
Wow. What's been the biggest benefit from ever since you made that switch?
Wow. The biggest benefit? Yeah. That's a great question. So sometimes we don't I don't say we don't give ourselves. A lot of times we don't have I'm trying to find the best words. We don't have the luxury of having a moment of rest and peace to just think about something differently. We get up in the morning, we grab our coffee, we hit the door, we're in traffic, we're working, we come home, we try to rest, but there's dishes or laundry, and we go to bed and we hit the reset and we do it again. And what I found was in the midst of all this, because life didn't slow down for me. I still had 2 kids. I remember one time my youngest son gave me a call, Greg. I'm in Chicago, downtown Loop, and my youngest son is rock solid, really gifted kid. And he calls me out of the blue, and I knew when he calls you, I knew something was wrong. And 2 days later, I'm picking him up from school, going for smoothies, Yeah. And so for me personally, I think that just having, I don't know, just being in that environment where I knew that I could, I'm trying to make sure I kind of wrestle back to the question because I've been veering off a little bit. Help me out with the question one more time, if you don't mind.
Yeah, what's been the biggest benefit?
The biggest, okay, sorry about that. Going back, it really has been finding that pocket of time, Greg, to really think about solutions to problems that you couldn't see before. And I've been in the small business space for 20 years, and I saw them very linearly, very straightforward. The pandemic showed a lot of people that everything we thought we knew that worked didn't necessarily work anymore. And so we saw changes in the business environment that would have taken a decade happen in months.
Right.
So we saw these amazing shifts.
Hard switch.
Again.
Yeah.
We saw these hard switches. And I don't think that I would have been able to see things. It forced me to go, okay, whoa, if I step back out into the world as the economy in the world starts to open back up with this mentality that I have it figured out just because I've been doing this for so long that I'm fooling myself. That's a bad approach.
Yeah.
And what this opportunity gave me to do, even in the midst of the crazy and checking on the son and making sure college son was fine and making sure home was fine, I still found those pockets of time to go, yeah, let me turn this slightly and view it this way. And what it has meant is that I've come out of the program where I've seen solutions to problems that I could not have imagined if I hadn't, one, taken the leap to do the program, or just really had the moment of time to think about them differently. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things.
And now that you've had a moment of time to think about things differently, who is ultimately going to be impacted the most?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the things I like to toss out is just numbers. And business people, we love tossing out our stats and numbers. Yes. And so one of the things I remember, a number that always stuck with me was this: 70% of small businesses are a sole proprietor. And it's just it's a natural given stat that's been there. It might tick up 1%, tick down 1%, but it's always been steady. And it's the easiest path of resistance to getting into business. But with that number, you also have the reality that these businesses are closing at like 3 times the rate of more established businesses. That's always been a long-standing number. The numbers that came out of the pandemic were staggering, Greg. We saw that businesses of different types, particularly minority businesses, we'll just take African American, they were closing at a rate 136 times that of baseline. So we just mentioned that baseline number. The next closest group was Latinx. They were closing at 36 times what would be an average baseline number. And then from there, it shrunk and shrunk. And what the pandemic showed us was that a lot of businesses, they start off weaker. They don't kind of go into launch with the type of mentorship that's needed. Hey, let me tell you how to do this properly. Here, I'm your advisor. There is the lack of funds or capital to help them really be on solid footing to start. There are different types of obstacles and headways that are kind of in the process that kind of make things a little bit more difficult.
And they won't know until they actually encounter them. And then they don't have a backup plan when it does happen.
There's no backup.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about it like that, the impact is going to be the small businesses that now you can look at business and say, hey, you need this, you need that, so that when the next storm comes, the biggest thing I've seen now that's just mind-blowing, we've all seen it, has been how easily integrated AI has happened into the small business space across any aspect.
I got it.
All of us.
I got it probably 9 months ago, and it does wonders for us.
And haven't looked back.
Yep.
It's that, I think that's the biggest thing between automation and that. So seeing some of the cool stuff that's come out of automating very simple and small business operations. We're not talking massive warehouse stuff. We're talking your basic, if I have one worker doing one job, repetitive, if you think about that repetitive motion, I've seen an unbelievable amount of solutions just for the mundane, routine task that you would have never thought about 2 to 3 years ago that will completely change things. And we're not talking about the big picture things. We're talking about the most basic of things.
Yeah, a couple of points to touch upon. So I like to bring up principles that come up from time to time. And one of them is, what did it have to do with? You were talking about taking time. Oh, it has to do with responding versus reacting. Okay? It looks like you've been put into a position to where you're now able to respond more as opposed to react to the day-to-day, the hustle and bustle, right?
Yeah.
And then the next principle is the quality of our life is dictated by the quality of questions we ask ourselves. Now that you've been in a position to then somewhat upright yourself and look at the world in a 360-degree view, you've been able to start asking yourself these questions and see if you can change your perspective on things. And that's where innovation comes. That's where change occurs, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's exciting.
It's really cool. I think one of the things that kind of really caught my eye, it was some type of event in San Diego. So I was invited, had been putting it off, and went out there. And one of the things that I saw, and this was a different from the robotics aspect of it, I'm trying to make sure I get it. There was a restaurant that was not in beta, but was an actually fully functioning restaurant. You could pull it up on YouTube that was completely automated and run, a burger joint, run by robotics.
Right.
So you had a manager that kind of opened the door. Can you imagine? And the robotics, they flipped the fries. You loaded it. They flipped the fries. They compressed and cooked the burgers. It was unbelievable. And we're not talking, this is a concept.
No.
And all it takes is one.
Yeah, I was walking around Vegas a couple months back for a conference, and I saw these robots making drinks.
Saw those too.
Yeah, around every corner. There's a robot making a drink for somebody.
Making drinks. The first time I saw that was maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's different. The versions I see now with the arms.
Are
different, because the first model I ever saw about one of those was you would load, it was on a circular spinning thing. And so the machine would be loaded with all the different types of drinks for whatever 1,000 different combinations. But what was neat about it is that the center of it would rotate and perfectly dispense the amount of alcohol per whatever.
Right.
And I thought, wow, again, you're talking, if you had to make 100 drinks, think about the slippage and spillage and waste that these things are. And so I think.
Yeah, or the free shots that the bartender gives out.
Free shots at the bar.
Uh-huh.
So is that, so you've seen, exactly what it looks like.
Yeah. I might have gone to a bar too. Once or twice, I don't know. But, I lost it. No.
That's all right, man. We're just flowing there. This is fantastic.
Yeah. So, okay. Oh, man, I freaking...
That's all right. I think one of the things that we had just kind of talked about, just kind of the perspective. And I would say to encourage people to fight for space in their life. I'll always ask, if I hadn't seen you in a while, Greg, I might ask, hey, Greg, what have you done for yourself lately? I'll often ask people that, because the reality, and I kind of know the answer already, but it's really for the other person. Hey, have you taken a moment in the midst of working crazy hours and responsibilities, and if you have a family and kids, to just do something for yourself?
Yeah, we're gonna touch upon. I remember the question I was gonna ask earlier, and we're definitely gonna touch upon it. Don't let me forget. Yeah. So, how does somebody acquire all this information that you have been gathering, collecting on, and then you want to help the small businesses? How do they get it?
Yeah.
Where do they find it?
So one of the running jokes is from a buddy of mine, owns a law firm in Chicago. His name is Burvey Power. We're thick as thieves, me and this guy. And he often recalls the early days, I'm talking high school, where he would come by my house or when we would meet, and I would always have information.
Yeah.
Always. It was scouring the Wall Street journals or the Harvard Business Review or ultimately working for Crane Communications. I had all this information. I knew where the information was because I kind of put myself, even as a youngster, in those spaces. And I think that is one, if I can be honest, Greg, I feel like that's one of the obstacles that people face. The information is all around us, but it doesn't help if you don't know where to find it, how to tap into it, and how to use it.
Yeah.
And I think that is where we are now. And also it's kind of, we don't need encyclopedias. You know,
Nope.
We don't need, we need, we talked to someone asked me about, your book is like perfect size. Fantastic. That was the reason. I didn't want to load people down with an encyclopedia. I think people need less information than what they think to just one foot in front of the other, ABC, kind of left foot, right
like
foot.
Chipotle.
Until that momentum gets them to a point where they can start to move faster. And so I would recommend for folks less information, kind of key into what you feel you need. Don't open the fire hose and start, taking it all in because you'll get overwhelmed.
Really ask yourself, what is the first step? Another principle, success happens when priorities happen in the right order.
Yeah.
So what's your first priority? What's number one?
Yep.
And then when you earn the right to go to number two, how do you know you earned that right to go to number two?
Yeah.
How do you know? Right? And I think that all happens. You win in the preparation.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times, amateurs, they'll go ahead and just wing the operation.
Yep.
And professionals, they've got systems and processes. But there's going to be that gray area. There's going to be a big gray area.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all a balancing act.
Yeah.
Because you have those people that are strictly doers where they don't plan at all, and that can be terrible. And then you have the people that plan to get ready, and don't take action at all.
Right.
So it's finding that sweet spot, right?
That is true. That's absolutely right.
Now, to your point earlier about doing things for you, here's something that I did to help myself. No one told me about this. Right. I just created it on my own. I actually wrote down a chart of thoughts that make me happy, like memories that I've done already, activities that make me happy, and then my dreams. And then if I'm ever stuck, if I have a drab day, I'm like, man, what am I even doing? I just want to go to sleep. No, I'll pop open that chart. And it's like, oh, you know what? I do like to go take photos, things. Does that hit me today? Because sometimes one thing will talk to me more than another. Right. Like today, I'm not really feeling for going to photos. So after this, I'm going to the luxury car dealership. I'm going to go look at some Aston Martins.
I like your thinking.
Yeah. It just fires me up.
I like your thinking.
And that's on my list. Cars. I like fast cars. Yeah. So that's, it's a good little exercise in case you forget. I think because my point is, I think people do forget what actually makes them happy because of that minutia.
Yep.
That work, go, busy lifestyle that we're all accustomed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I like that.
Thank you. So let's throw it way back.
Okay.
We're going to take a wild ride on the magic school bus.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Back to the beginning.
Buckle up here.
Yes. So, what suburb did you grow up in? or as close as you can get geographically. Other than Chicago, which is this big,
Yeah. So I will actually, what I'll do is I'll pull it down to the actual area. So Chicago is primarily a city that is made up of north side, the west side, and the south side. You can always catch someone, I live on the east side. There's no east side of Chicago.
Because it's water.
Because it's water. So anyone that ever tells you, I live on the east, they're like, no, you don't. You're not from there. The area that I grew up in, pretty much were two areas. And so one area is the Auburn Gresham, Inglewood area of Chicago, which is still on the south side, but more as you're traveling west of the city. The other area was an area that's just north of Chatham. And but it was my great-grandmother's neighborhood. It was made up of the area of those individuals like my great-grandma, the older, well-established matriarch and patriarchs of the Black community that just kept these great communities, great homes. And so I would go from the area that I would ultimately move to where I felt like, oh man, life got a little bit more sketchier, to my great-grandmother. And so I always felt like there was this balance between those two areas. And so the area, south side of Chicago is where...
The same time period, though.
Same time.
You're both going back and forth.
Same time period, I'm going back and forth.
Okay.
And we talked about balance. That's where I felt like I got a lot of my balance from.
In elementary school.
Yeah.
Did you live with both your parents?
No. So my parents separated when I was younger.
How young?
Maybe about 4. I'm going to say 4 or 5. I'm trying to make sure, but
Do you remember that?
I remember not necessarily the separation, but I remember that my dad was just always around.
He was always around.
My dad was always around. So my
In the
dad was
house. Can you visualize the house you grew up in?
No, he wasn't always around in the house because my parents had separated younger.
Yeah, yeah.
But just the apartment that I remember is in that early utopic. It was 1853 North Fremont. Wow.
What? That's good.
North side of Chicago.
Yeah, so from 0 to 5, I've got vivid memories of the house that I grew up in New Jersey, outside of Trenton. Yeah, it was like a 3-bedroom house, and I can walk you through the whole thing and the backyard and everything. Do you have the same clear memories?
I have a memory
of
that place.
Of that place.
Of that
0 to
place.
5.
0 to 5. I can remember that.
And age 4, you pop.
Yeah, age 4, my parents separated, or they weren't. I remember them not being together.
Got it.
That's kind of the age.
But they lived in the same place, or
no.
He moved out.
No, they were in separate places, but I would just see him. He was always present, is what I like to say.
Okay. But you lived with your mom.
I lived with my mom primarily. Yeah.
Got it. Now, with that experience, was it harsh times, or was it kind of like awkward, or what was that like for you?
It wasn't. I think what was interesting is that as a young person, you don't get to see the dynamics of adults as clearly. And as you got older, you saw, okay, mom and dad were working out. What was really cool is that at a certain point, I remember whatever the tension that might have been as folks, I can imagine what it might look like to separate from someone or individuals that are divorced and just having to work that out. But I remember what I remember the most, it stands out as a younger person, was them making this conscious decision that, hey, whatever differences we might have, this guy is the most important. And their relationship became amazingly beautiful. It was apparent up until my father died. We'd have events, and him and my mom would be poking each other. My dad was sick. My mom would come and make sure he was okay. So it was just seeing that relationship over the years was very cool, even though they weren't together.
Seems to me like they loved each other. It just didn't have the romance side.
They probably didn't. I don't know if, I don't know where my dad was in terms of at that young age.
Right.
For being
How old was he?
I don't know, maybe 20 something. They had to be about 26.
26? Mid-20s?
So not too young, but it's just understanding.
I can't imagine having kids at 26. Good.
I got married at 26, so it's kind of, for me, it's different. You know what I'm saying? It's so different now. Like I could see folks aren't getting married these days at the same age. So there's a lot of changes, but I just remember, what stands out the most is that my father, even though my parents weren't together, was around.
Mm-hmm.
And that they always seemed like they were working in my best interest, and that was cool.
Brothers and sisters?
I do. I have one younger brother.
Where's he at right now?
He's in Chicago. He's 10 years younger than me, so he's
10.
Living his life and doing his thing, and so it's really cool. I've always been super protective of my one and only brother, so I'm super protective of that guy. I kind of looked out. I was like his uncle, a pseudo best friend, protector, and so I'm really proud of him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is he having a good time in life?
I think he is. My younger brother's in entertainment, and so I get to benefit from a lot of meeting cool people and shows and events that I would never be able to get in, or no one would really care that I was, I'm around. But my brother, he makes that happen sometimes, so it's cool.
That is cool.
It is very cool.
Nice. Okay. So you're growing up. You're 0 to 5. You're in the apartment.
Yep.
At what age? Just for curiosity, what did you leave that apartment?
I would say it had to have been between 4 and 5. And so
okay.
So what I remember was the transition from, again, a place that looked kind of like the brick exposure, the wooden floors, the very clean aesthetics of a north side apartment, of our north side apartment, where you had access to the movie theater. They walk and go see Star Wars initially. All these other cool stuff that was around, to between that 4 and 5, because my mom stepped away from teaching and us life taking a economic downturn, for the lack of a better word, we wound up moving into one of those amazing buildings that my great grandmother owned. Again, her looking forward and having the foresight to own real estate gave us a landing pad when we needed it.
It's amazing.
And that was really, really cool.
That's so cool. So you moved out of our first apartment that you ever lived in.
Yeah.
You moved into your grandmother's building. What was the ambiance like when you got off Did you get dropped off in elementary school to school, or did you get driven or bus or what?
Yeah, so I have a cool story about that. My family and I, until I was about 13 or 14, we never had a car. We never had a working operational car. We just didn't have the money. My mom had that stretch of time where she just wasn't teaching, and she would ultimately kind of circle back to teaching and canning. I've always admired her for that, for the strength to step out of the space that wasn't working for her and find a way for us to just kind of push through and make it, and then reboot herself to come back and do it again at a high level. But there was no car. So fun story is that when I started school, I would be taken to school. I even forgot how at that early age, but the school I went to was on the other side of town, just an amazing school. And I forgot how I got there, but what I remember the most, Greg, was this one incident where my mom spent a week, as I'm this young guy. When I say young, I think people don't realize kids are amazing. Forget me. I look at my own kids and other kids. Kids are amazing human beings. My mother spent a week taking me to school on this one route. We get to one stop. Hey, this is Halstead. Yeah. If you look across the street, there's a McDonald's there. You're right, Mom. I see it. There's a McDonald's there. We're on 79th and Vincennes. If you look here, this is called a currency exchange. Currency exchange is right here at 79th. And we would, for a week. So one day, I get out of school and I'm waiting for my mom to pick me up. And I sat outside and I just wait. And I wait like an hour, more than an hour. And finally, something in me said, get moving. She's not coming. And so in my mind, I started to backtrack. 79th and Cottage Grove, there's a restaurant. 79th and Vincennes is the currency exchange. 79th and Halstead is the McDonald's until I got home. And when I walked in, my mom was, hey, Cav, how was your day? I wouldn't find out till years later, Greg. She watched me all the way home. She had somebody ride with her to make sure I was getting on the proper bus. She knew that I had to learn how to survive if I was going to handle or make it in this new environment. And there was nothing better. I started catching the bus at like 5 and 6, public transportation. Most people have no clue about this. So when people see me and I'm so comfortable with public transportation in any city, because I spent a lifetime learning how to navigate public transportation in Chicago.
Yeah.
Just a cool story. But the other thing about that I think about, I can't imagine how hard it was. I see your face. I can't imagine how hard it was for her to do that, to have the strength to go, I need to release my small son into the world so that he can make it. And that grind and that grit, it didn't stop from that point. It just kept going.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But that's what school looked like. And after that, I would just catch the bus through the most brutal Chicago winters year after year. Snow up to your knees, ice cold. It didn't matter.
That wind is no joke.
That wind is no joke.
You ever get frostbite?
I did. My dad did because of his work.
Yeah.
But I never did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Deal. So when you got off the school, the bus,
yeah.
to walk inside the new place,
yeah.
right? What was the ambiance like in the house?
In the house.
Because your brother wasn't born yet.
My brother wasn't born. It was me and my mom for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And so we figured it out. And so for me, that early, the early thing that I tell people, I'm super protective about my sons. And, I tell them that a big part of me being a father has been to give them the opportunity to just be kids. I got a 21-year-old now who reminds me, hey, Dad, I'm grown, so we navigate that. But for their entire life, Greg, a big part of that was I need to make sure that you have the space to be a kid for as long as you can. Because a part of that for me, I didn't feel it that way, but there was a lot of childhood that was missed. But then I had grandparents who recognized what was happening, that we were in a situation. So I had their aid and their assistance through housing, but they saw me out working and hustling. I sold newspapers. I worked Chicago fairs. I collected cans. I did whatever I could. And the little money that I would make, I would just bring it home or buy groceries or do something simple. I would always I was the kid that always took care of my great-grandmother's property. I took a lot of pride in taking care of her place because something about me knew very early that her maintaining this was a sacrifice and a benefit for our entire family. I'm living it now. I get a chance to live in a place that she purchased, maintained, has rent out most of the places, but then So there were cool things I remember, like hearing later on. The name, I moved into the room that I was in, there's a name written on the doorpost, Anthony. Who the heck is writing their name on the doorpost? I would find out later that my cousin Anthony, who I just saw a couple of months ago in Chicago, who's been like a mentor to me over all these years since I was a kid, he lived there too.
No.
When life took a turn and he needed to, and he ran amazing organizations in Chicago, social organizations in Chicago. He was the executive director, CEO, whatever it is. But at that early stage of his life, where he didn't have a place to go, my grandmother said, go stay over there. And I found out later, another family member stayed as they tried. My great-grandmother used that house to build up our family.
Are you willing to say her name? Is it okay?
Oh, yeah. Oh, Mary Joyce.
Mary Joyce.
Man, thank you for asking. I love it. That woman,
Mary Joyce. Yeah.
Mary Louise Joyce is the woman who taught me, who brought me outside to, even though I didn't like it at the time, to garden next to her garage. I have a green thumb because of that. I can grow and garden pretty much anything. And that woman taught so many lessons, but that was the biggest one. Family was important. You look out for people, but just even seeing the name. My cousin Anthony told me, say, yeah, man, I wrote that years later. After I might have been grown. So yeah, I used to live in your great-grandmother's place. She knew that I was struggling when I was young, and she gave me a roof over my head so I could finish school, start working.
Man.
Cool stuff like that.
What I would do to interview her.
Man.
Like, how'd she become like that?
Man,
it's amazing.
Yeah, just
about the adversity she went over, and then she's got this mindset of, let me buy real estate, let me build wealth.
Let me build wealth.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, that's
amazing.
Really cool. And then the impact that she had.
Yeah.
You know, let's talk about principles. It's not about the money. It's about what the money can do. So your grandma, I mean, what'd she do with the money, right? She bought properties that was able to facilitate not just one, but 3 people in her family.
At least.
Right, that's the ones you know of.
That I know of.
To help them in times of need. And it's like, now they're all flourishing.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You ever act out as a kid, middle school, elementary school?
Yeah, I remember there was a season, I was thinking about this today, and I share any of my, luckily, because of my great-grandmother's influence. She was such a powerful influence because she, in essence, raised everyone. Yeah.
I caught a mistake I made. It's your great-grandma, Mary Joyce.
Mary Joyce is my
your great-grandma. She's the property owner.
Yeah.
Okay. When your grandma.
Yeah, grandmothers were I knew both of my grandmothers, and I knew both of my grandfathers as well, but that woman sat she sat on the top there.
Cool. Okay. Yeah.
So what was the question again? Sorry.
Oh, what was the question?
That's all right.
Oh man,
I love that we can sit here and just talk like this. This is fantastic. But did I ever act out?
Yeah. Elementary school.
Yeah.
We want to focus on that.
So there was during that season. So again, I went to the same school. I went to 2 schools back to back, which were down the street from each other. John T. Peary, and then Arthur Dixon. And I want to take a moment to thank the educators, some of whom I still connect and talk with on Facebook to this day as a middle-aged dad. What they did, the Catherine Maccabees and the Mrs. Duncans and all the other teachers, they poured, like my mom, they poured heart and soul into making sure that we left there with a foundation. And so I remember during that season, because we didn't have money, I don't like to say the word poor, because we had
poor is a mindset.
Poor is a mindset. I've always felt I never felt poor. So we didn't have a car. My mom during that stretch wasn't working as an educator until years later. I never felt what was poured into me. Never allowed me to feel poor. But I do remember a season where, just almost out of boredom, I would kick around. I tell my sons this all the time. Me and buddies would come home from school, and it'd be the store, and we'd go into the store, and we'd steal like cupcakes and honey buns, and what I loved about sweets, everybody. So just ridiculous stuff like that. But I remember the graciousness of the people who knew. They'd just be like, "Hey, I notice your pockets are getting a little bit heavier. It might be time for you to leave." And so knowing that would be my cue. Let's get out of here. I've taken these donuts, or my friend took these donuts. And I tell my sons this because I don't want them to have this utopic idea of Dad. But the one thing I do remember, which was just these impressing moments, I never did anything wild off the cuff. And I think there is this one moment that I remember. We didn't have any money. I think at this time my grandfather might have given us a car. We went into the store and I think I stole a transformer.
Yeah.
Some toy. We didn't have the money for it. So
those are cool.
Yeah, those are cool. In my defense. But no, I stole this transformer and I got caught. And I've told my sons this. I got caught stealing this. And I said, I want to tell you that one of the reasons why you never heard about Dad in jail or in trouble or anything else like that. The individual let us go. I might have been 12 or 11, something just stupid. I'm going to take this home and I'm going to play with it. I got busted and we went into the room. And the guy, he lets us go because I didn't have a record. I'm not doing it all the time. I just wanted that toy one time. And we got to the car, and my mom just bawled. She didn't say a word. She put her head on the steering wheel and just cried. And I remember going, I never want her to feel anything like that again. It was just such a memory. And I have several memories like that. But just watching, just memories where
that one really hit.
It was, I never wanted to cause my family pain because I knew when I think about my great grandmother, man, I never wanted to see what she did for all the generations. I never wanted to do anything to cause her pain or my mom. And so that moment said, okay, luckily it's a transformer. It's not a car. It's not it, but it kept me on a path where I knew I didn't want to bring any hardship into my home, and it defined me.
Dang.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I bet you can remember sitting in that car.
Yeah, I can. I feel like I can literally. I can remember the car. Yeah. I can remember the moment. I can remember the silence. But it was one of the most forming moments of my life, just knowing that even toy interactions, they hurt, they feel. And so I'm very grateful at this point. I have two kids, a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old. I've had not one problem from either boy. I've just been blessed and amazed. Like, wow, this is cool. Thank you both.
Yeah, truly. It reminds me of the time that or one of the few times rather that I felt grace from an adult growing up. It's a little bit different twist on the story that you had told, right? There's a pivotal moment for you in the sense that you didn't want to feel that pain again that you caused for your mom, right? Something happened to me that was also pivotal, but the point is, it all came from the adult. And it's like a different approach where you'd think if the kid acts out, the adult goes, bad kid, don't do that again, and then everything's solved. Right. Rarely does it work like that. Like you had to see your mom crying. Yeah. One time when I was growing up, I was at this party at this house up the street from me, probably like 3 miles up the road. And this kid from another school was there, and I was giving everybody, see you later around the table. Yeah. And he dissed me in front of everybody, and I didn't even know him. Yeah. I never met him. I didn't know his name, nothing. Yeah. I never seen him in my life. I was just saying, hey, see, man, I'm good. And he's like, oh, pooh. And I was like, what?
Whoa.
Oh, man, and then my buddy he poked me a little bit. He's like, oh, man, it makes me want to put the air out of his tires so he's, stuck here. So I'm thinking to myself, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Right. And, I was like 18 or whatever. And I went ahead and did that for a little bit. And then they caught me outside. And then I got my buddy's car. I was like, we got to go, bro. So we went back to my house. They showed up. My dad's like, what are you doing here? He had this thing in his hand. He's like, get out of my house. Right. I'm like, oh, shit. But then I had to go apologize to the parents that let everybody at their house. Yikes. Yeah, my dad said, you're going to go apologize to them because you caused a ruckus. Yeah. And that could have been bad if that tire was flat. I'm like, I didn't think about that. Anyways, I get over there. I'm at this guy's porch. He's this shaved head, goatee, muscular Italian guy.
Right.
Greg. I'm like,
right.
He takes his hand. I'm choking up because I feel bad. Yeah. He takes his hand, goes like this in the back of my neck. I'm like, is he going to break me?
Right.
And he goes, I forgive you.
Wow.
And dude, that moment, that act, changed the way I felt about things. I'm like, this is the first time I felt like forgiveness.
Like real forgiveness.
Yeah, because my environment growing up, it was a lot of animosity and militant mindset.
Sure.
where it's like, you messed up, don't do that, right? So it was like, you just never know where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
You never know how things are going to impact you, but it's like a message to all the parents out there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's a good lesson.
It's a good lesson.
It's a really good lesson.
Thanks for letting me share that story.
I appreciate it.
I never did anything like that again, by the way.
Right? No more tire action.
Yeah, because I didn't want to, like, it would be a dishonor to that guy that gave me grace.
Yeah.
That's the moral of the story.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Could definitely see that.
So, moving on to middle school.
Yeah.
Now, middle school can get awkward. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Hormones.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You all of a sudden you're 5 feet tall. The next thing you're 6'5". Like all these things start happening. You just right, sports, whatever. What was middle school like for you?
Wow, middle school again, going from right down to there was a lot of familiarity. So that's one thing. One thing was that there was familiarity because I had started navigating the city so young. It felt like just a natural. It felt like I'm 6'1" at this point because my father's a giant and my grandfather's a giant. I have a father who's 6'7". Like my grandfather when he was alive was about 6'7", about the same size. And so I'm like the runt. I call myself the runt of the family. And so.
And you're 6'1".
I'm about 6 feet.
About
6'1". Yeah, like I'm really getting to wear size 13 shoes. So just this giant, lanky kid walking around. But I think that what was interesting for me is that had my foundation had been established and set so early that by the time I got to that point, even though kids were doing all kinds of things from sex to drugs to you name it, there was that part of me that knew very clearly who I was.
Mm.
And so I was never the kid who drank out of term, really. I was never the kid who did any drugs. It was just, look, you're not going to make me do anything. There's no amount of peer pressure that you're going to throw at me. And I've been in those situations that you're not going to move me. My foundation is rock solid. I got a 97-year-old grandmother to answer to. You know, if stealing a transformer made my mom cry, man, what would doing something adverse, how would that break her heart? And so there was a part of me that even as I transitioned grammar to middle, I just always knew who I was, the awkwardness of liking girls and kind of figuring that part out. That kind of stuff takes care of itself, Yeah. But the actual watching some of the things that other kids would kind of be swayed in or influenced by, it just, my fortitude was rock solid, Greg. You were not about to move me off of my mindset and what I believed and things of that nature. And that impacted other kids. Yeah. Super disciplined as a kid. I had to be.
When did you have your first girlfriend?
First girlfriend, I would say, was probably, I want to say, I don't know if you can claim.
I had a girlfriend in 5th grade.
I was going to say 6th grade.
6th grade.
Is where I felt like somebody thought my head was not too round to be like, okay, he might be a boyfriendish kind of person. But again, they were like kind of, they kind of started at lunchtime and they'd be over with by the time.
Yeah, you barely see him. It seemed like once for 4 seconds.
Right.
You're like, no, it's my girlfriend.
That's my girlfriend, right? Right. So I would say probably around that time. If I had to kind of put 6th grade and then maybe there was another in 7th grade. Don't remember one in 8th grade. Not so much in 9th. Just kind of progressed to maybe about sophomore year or so. Okay. I started to date.
Yeah, well, the reason I ask is, some people will legitimately will not have a girlfriend until they're in their 20s.
Yeah.
It's like very contrasting stories, ways of life.
Yeah.
Man. So when we talk about two opposites, let's say loose and tight.
Yeah.
Loose, you're the kid that's getting in trouble all the time.
Yeah.
That's doing the drugs. That's acting out.
Right.
Bad. Tight, you're polished. Super disciplined, right? Showing up to school every single day, stuff like that. We're just giving names. We're labeling here.
Yeah, sure.
You're more on the tight side.
Yeah.
Has that ever backfired?
I think I've always kind of considered myself this leader, and I had teachers and things that poured into me early that was like, look, you're a leader. When I started to do that acting, that class clowny acting out, teachers were like, look, you're going against your grain. It's very clear that that's not you. So this is really who you are. Yeah. And so I got to a point in that journey where I owned that. I remember, one time I was doing something, I was following a friend of mine, and my teacher saw it in me. And she was like, yo, stop. We're stopping class right now. She says, I got to ask, I'm polling the class. She said, how many of you, if you had to, for whatever particular reason, would follow this person? And a couple of people raised their hand, maybe 20, 25 kids in class. Now, how many of you, if it came down to it, would follow Cavanaugh? And the entire class, like, raised their hand. And she looked at me. She looked at me. She said, what are you doing? And in that moment, I remember going, I'm never following anybody. I'm never following anybody else. Because she saw it. She saw me doing it. And she was like, nah, let me just push the pause button for a moment to remind this kid who he is.
Yeah.
And from that moment, I still have that moment etched in my brain that, like, nah, I'm not following anyone else. That leadership is a part of who I am.
Have you told that story to your sons?
I think I have.
Okay.
At some
It's a good one.
And I remind them of who they are.
Yeah.
Through a story like that. Like, look, you've always been a leader.
What about fighting?
Oh, fighting was my pastime. Fighting. Like I said, there are certain things that I didn't do, but man, fighting was just a natural part of growing up inner city. So you can imagine, Greg, I'm the lightest kid in the inner city black neighborhood of Chicago. So you oftentimes get folks that would test you. And plus, as kids got older, we would play the most dangerous games on the planet. Back in the day, we had like Kung Fu Saturday or Kung Fu Sunday. So we pretty much would go from watching Kung Fu, I kid you not, we go from watching a string, and all the boys watched it, a string of Kung Fu, the classic Kung Fu, and we would, oh man, crack our knuckles and go at it on Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
But not just that, boys are growing up. It's a part of manhood. It's a part of our DNA that we are testing ourselves. Yeah. And so in the neighborhood, you could call it any neighborhood, any school, but in my neighborhood, in our school, it felt like there was a fight like every day. And then you just go back to, oh, okay, that happened. And
really,
yeah, it just was. And I'm kind of one of those people. It's a part of just how I'm wired. I always wanted the smoke. I always wanted the action, just because I knew, I knew that a part of me was that little cowboy warrior kid that knew how to survive and catch the bus at 6 and hustle and grind. And so if you bring it to my doorstep, then...
How many fights do you think you got in?
A lot. But they never felt like anything egregious or anything super like I hate you, or it felt like a lot of young men coming into themselves, testing themselves against one another. That if I had to quantify, there never ever felt like any malice behind it. I transferred schools one time, and I remember in my freshman year, I'm getting on the bus, and a sophomore is he does something to try to punk me.
Yeah.
And I'm like thinking to myself, this guy has no idea where I come from or who I am. And he was with his people, and I was ready for it right there. And it took a friend, we're on the bus. I didn't care. But it took someone that knew them that was just like, hey, calm down. But this guy, he was testing himself. He was feeling himself.
Yeah.
He wasn't really about that action of that life. He had people with him. There were girls he was gassed up. There were girls on the bus. And so I was about to give him an introduction. That's just how I've always been. I never shied away from that.
You said you were a tall, lanky kid.
Yeah.
Big feet.
Yeah.
When did you fill in?
So that's I didn't fill in, Greg, believe it or not, until my freshman year in college. So if you can imagine, again, this is one of those stories that I always like to say this, trying to make sure that I keep my contributions, and I've worked hard. My family and I have worked hard, but I still take a moment to acknowledge all the people that somehow God just put across my path over the years at these right times. I was home for the summer after freshman year. They called me, I was this big skinny kid with big head, and so folks would joke, my thing, he looked like a lollipop. My father's 6'7", I got this giant head and this skinny body. But I wound up stumbling into the community college that I grew up in for summer camps and sports, and I worked at. And in the bowels of this building was the oldest gym you have ever seen, rusted iron weights.
Yeah.
And I walked in there, and there was an old gentleman, an elder, who sat and ran the gym. He looked like he had been there forever. I bumped into a guy, bald head, excellent physique, about 40, and I thought, man, this guy's ancient. He said, do you want to work out? And I was like, sure. by the time I got home that day, my younger brother had to help me take my shirt off. I couldn't even get my shirt off. And I showed up again the next day.
Yeah.
At the end of the summer, my body and frame, if you can imagine, that guy wasn't playing around.
No.
He didn't look 20 at 40 for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me at the end of the summer, he said, man, I'm proud of you. He said, I didn't think you were going to come back after the first day. I said, I worked you hard for a reason. And you came back and you showed up every day. And through that, my frame and my body, so I'm older now, but my frame and my body expand. So by the time I got back, people didn't recognize it was me.
Dude, I can only imagine. You probably look like a monster.
It was at 6'3" and having come back, I went from, gained about 20 pounds over the summer.
It's a lot.
It was a lot. But just working out someone that took the time to pour into me and invest in me and teach me how to do things properly was huge.
Wow. Do you remember that guy's name?
I do not. I remember his face. So that's what's great. I remember both the older gentleman who ran the gym, who you knew you would see old pictures of him on the wall when he competed.
Okay.
So you knew he was about that life back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost imagine when I have a chance to think about it now, he's probably the one that trained and taught a lot of those guys who passed through there, like myself.
What's the name of the gym?
It was the community college gym at an old building in Chicago called Kennedy King College.
Okay.
It was one of the 5 or 6 neighborhood colleges in the city. And in the basement, I'd been in this building my entire life, had no clue this thing was in here as a kid.
Cool.
So really, really cool moment. But I think those gentlemen who took the time over the summer.
That's crazy. That's so great.
Very, very cool.
It's like I can only imagine putting myself in their shoes for a minute, seeing you walk through, and then they felt called to ask you, hey, you want to work out?
Yeah.
It's like they knew what they were doing. They had a plan, and then it worked out.
It worked out.
Literally and physically. Literally. Okay.
It worked out.
Yeah. So going back to middle school.
Yeah.
You're getting in these fights, how did that impact your mom? Did she really... Did you have discussions about that?
I didn't, Greg. Those fights, they always felt super fleeting.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I am big on is that I tell my sons, man, you always have to know who you are, and you have to be your own person. And so I remember there'd be times I'd be out at the neighborhood pool. It might be half a mile away. You'd walk there because there was a car, or you'd bike, and you would recognize, okay, something doesn't feel right. Spider senses would start tingling. And I remember this one time in particular, I always was looking out or growing up in the hood, as you call it, or whatever. You just kind of got used to understanding. You had to always be aware of your surroundings. I remember leaving the pool one time, and I could see the rumblings of guys, like you said, the one guy that dissed you, but in the back, in the landscape, stuff starting to take shape with some other guys looking at our group. And so we leave, and all of a sudden, in the distance, this group leaves behind us. And I tell the guys with me, I said, we are being followed. There's more guys than we have people to turn around and face up with. When we hit the stop sign, just take off running. And as soon as we got to that stop sign, we go. So there was the part of me that knew when to fight and when to retreat for another day. And I think my mom understood that. I think by this point, she knew what she had created. She knew that and I mean that in a good way. Mm-hmm. She knew that she had done the things that it took for me to know how to survive and to take care of myself. And she saw that on a regular basis. And I think she trusted that. I really feel that she trusted, okay, I've created this. This kid has shown me his actions now. And so I think that those things didn't really impact her that way, because they were either really small things that would happen at school and finish, or me navigating out of hard stuff.
Yeah. Wow. That's like such a unique dynamic, because big contrast from where I grew up. If we got in a fight, it was like the worst thing you could ever do.
Yeah.
And then you got the principals involved, the parents involved. You get expelled all the time. Kids are getting expelled for fighting.
Oh, wow.
And it could be a fight that's not even, well, no, you'd have to be on school grounds. But
right.
Yeah, it was an atrocity.
Yeah. I think that was always one of the things too. So kids were smart enough to know the fights would always occur off school grounds.
Off school, okay.
So the folks would always it'd be like folks would be looking at the clock, looking at you.
Yeah.
Like, I'll see you
Yeah, but it was like a typical day at the office.
A typical day at the office.
Yeah.
If something happened, if young kid was feeling himself that day, because we're all from similar backgrounds, and we are finding ourselves. These young men are finding themselves in this world, and that was a part of it. Kind of iron sharpening iron, so to speak.
Reading this book right now about the phases of men, and that would be the night phase where they challenge themselves. Everything's a challenge. I want to push myself.
No, that sounds like a Wild at Heart reference there, or Way of the Wild Heart.
Is that a book?
Those two are exceptional books for understanding the challenge of the journeys of men. The beloved child, the cowboy, the knight, the king, the sage.
The sage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if it's the same author.
It could be.
Yeah, because those terms,
The terms. I used to give copies of that book away to men, watching men grow up and see the things that they would bump into. And not that my situation was figured out, my navigation to manhood, but just you would see these things with other young men and like, man, these are big, huge, gaping holes. Where does that come from? And I think what you just talked about, it's a whole nother podcast and a whole nother story, but I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, we're going to touch a little bit upon that kind of stuff here a little later, just in an appropriate way. So, okay, you're getting into high school now.
Yeah.
Were you still at the great-grandma's apartment in high school?
Yeah, so all the way through my early graduating undergraduate is when I was there. So, early 20s or so.
Okay.
Early 20s, so my mom stayed there for a few years later before she moved to like a northern part of the city.
Yeah.
But that was home. I went to one high school that was nearer to my home, but then my heart was always for another school that was highly ranked in the city. So you had a few schools.
For academics or sports or everything?
For academics. I was never a good athlete. I wrestled for a couple of years, and people bended me up like a pretzel because I was so, they took pride in the pretzel form that they would form me into. So I was never a big athlete at all. My kids are great athletes. But I transferred from freshman year to the school that I had my eyes on coming out of grammar school or middle school.
Yeah.
That I couldn't get in because there was influx. Just so many people vying to get in. And so it wasn't until the sophomore year I was able to get into that school. And it was like one of the top 3 schools in the city.
Dang.
It was like a Whitney Young, a Lane Tech, and my high school, Kenwood.
Kenwood. Is Kenwood still around?
Kenwood is still around, still doing the same thing, producing amazing amazing sports. So just a great place and it's in Hyde Park in Chicago. So if you've been to Chicago, you know Hyde Park, where University of Chicago is. It's in that same neighborhood.
Yeah. Hyde Park, how far is that from Bucktown?
Bucktown, I would probably say, if I had to, 5-6 miles.
5-6 miles?
At best.
Yeah.
Just go north.
Is Hyde Park an eclectic artistic vibe, or is it more like what do you call it when you big buildings, architectural, or is it old? What's the ambiance?
Yeah, it's of
Hyde Park.
It's always been this. So Hyde Park reminds you of what Austin might be in Texas, in the city. It is just this unique, cool, collective, diverse area.
Future forward? Is it techie-ish, or? I
think the impact of something like the high school, which was a magnet school that drew all of this. You had the president, at one point, President Barack Obama lived right down the street.
Really?
Yeah, and so and then you have the anchoring of the lake, which is right there. So you go over a few blocks and you're at the lake.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
So it's just it was one of those kind of pockets. Then, like I said, you go a little bit south and you're bumping right into the start of the museum campus, and then the what else was there? University of Chicago. So you see, you got so this huge Ivy League powerhouse.
Nice place.
It's a really nice pocket within the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in high school and maybe wrestled for a couple of years.
Yeah.
What's it like when you got off the bus and going into your house in high school? How's your mom doing? What's the ambiance like in your home?
My mom was doing well. So my mom has always been a scrapper.
Yeah.
She just has that thing. She was the first one in our family to go to college.
Really?
And so what was interesting, I would ultimately, later on in life, wind up teaching at the college she graduated from and going back and finishing out this amazing Civic Scholars Program at the university. And so at the same university that I taught at and that she went to school at. But my mom always had just this fire in her. You know, I think, what did it take for someone who didn't have a background of academics? Oh, my father went to school or my grandmother, to break through and kind of set the stage for all of us who would come after to go to school.
Yeah.
And so she's always had this very grit, determination. Even while she was not teaching, she was always doing something to move our family along, somehow. She might have been cleaning at one point or working administration, but she just needed, I could tell she needed that break from what she was probably bumping into in the school system in Chicago, because Chicago is a pretty segregated city.
What was she bumping into? Because I know she was in and out a couple of times.
Well, so no, she only stepped away from teaching one time. It was maybe like 6+ years.
Okay.
Where she was six years or more. And I think if I had to put it into, Chicago is a very machine-oriented city. And what I mean by that is that it's been run primarily by the old school legacy folks who run the city forever. If you think about it like that, we had one mayor for decades, and then his son ultimately ran the city. And so it's a machine kind of organization. So I bet she probably ran into the fact of being a woman in the classroom. She probably ran into the problems of being a black woman in the classroom, in different cultures and environments. So you had a lot of different things. She probably ran into a bunch of ceiling things. There are a lot of things that probably contributed to that.
And I think it's interesting how connected the school system is with politics.
Yeah. Huge.
They're so integrated.
Hugely connected.
Right. Yeah. So your mom, I get that. Yeah, I don't blame her for taking a break. My sister was a teacher for like 2 years after she graduated college. Yeah. Because she went to college to be a teacher. Yeah. She's like, I don't know about
I'm not doing this right.
Yeah. Respect for teachers, though, big time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. They put a huge impact on the youth of America.
Yeah, they do.
It's a big deal. So what about your dad?
Yeah.
High school. You said he was around in elementary school all the time. Middle school and high school, is he still there? Still seeing him?
Sorry about that. It's still the same. So my dad was, again, it was interesting. My dad, he moved, his family, his mom and his mom moved from Louisiana. So my dad's family is from Louisiana.
How did they talk like in Louisiana? Does he have that accent?
He did. My father did have a NOLA, yeah, baby. They'd use a lot of that in there. So I just came from New Orleans a couple of weeks ago, and I loved it because, again, when I would go down there as a kid over the years, that accent is so thick and so fantastic.
Nostalgic.
It's nostalgic. And so my father, he did talk like that to some degree, but it wasn't super heavy because he spent a good part of his time in the Chicago area. So he moved up here him and his mom moved up here because his aunt and her family had moved up. So there was a base here, a very strong base.
So now they talk Chicago.
Right. Now it's a whole different accent. And so, that's, I used to get that a lot when I would move from city to city. Like, they're like, where are you from? Like, what accent? But now, once I moved back, I heard it loud and clear. Chicago has an amazingly thick, unique accent. But in high school, it was kind of the same. And so my father worked at the firehouse, which was down the street from me, which is probably about a 10-minute drive if I had to be, 15 minutes max. Yeah. And so I knew on days he was working, I would sometimes swing by there. I'd use my mom's car to, by this time we'd gotten a car years before, maybe a couple of years before. And so I'd go down there and hang out with them if they didn't have anything going on. I grew up kind of in a firehouse, so I always...
Fun, right?
It was just a blast, man. Yeah. People don't realize how much fun it is.
Fun.
Those gentlemen ate amazing.
Right.
The food.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And they could all cook. So my father comes from a family of men who just cooked.
Yeah.
Amazingly cooked. I mean, just could wear a kitchen out. And so you would pop in there. I'm wondering now, Greg, if I always popped in so often because I knew that they were going to be eating well. Like, I'm thinking about that. Yeah, I wanted to see my dad. I loved him. Yeah. But I knew that those guys are going to be eating well, and they always ate well.
If you cook it, they will come.
When you cook it, and I always showed up. Hey, is my dad here? Knowing he'd be there, and I'd sit down and grab a plate. And so, but my father was always around. One of the things I remember in my younger days, and just kind of gives you an idea, my father was super soft-spoken. So he was like the gentle giant, this gigantic person.
Yeah, 6'7".
6'7". Yeah. But his heart was good, and he was gentle, but he was a man. He was you knew when it came to protecting his own, watch out for that guy, because he would never let. But one time he had bought me this bike, and someone had broken into our basement and stolen it. Yeah, he had just gotten his bike. I loved this bike. He knew I loved this bike, and so someone had broken in, taken this bike, and it was gone. I just knew it was gone because that's how I got around the neighborhood. And that's how I went from this part of town to that part of town. I hooked up with my buddies. My father showed up on an afternoon, just with that face. He had bought the bike. Someone had stolen the bike, and he knew how it made me feel.
Yeah.
I watched my father disappear into our neighborhood, Greg, for like an hour. And at the end of that hour and a half, my bike shows up.
How the heck can you do that?
What on earth? Because he used to be, he's a former military as well. I always wondered, as I got older, I wondered, what did this man say to these kids in the hood to make them turn up that bike? And the bike was like a block or so down the street.
Yeah.
All I saw was him coming out with this bike.
How do you do that?
And I thought, oh my gosh. But that's one of those stories that stands out. And he didn't really, because he was never over the top.
Yeah.
Always had a very calm demeanor, which I loved about. I've always emulated.
Yeah.
Or tried to emulate. Let me change that. I've always tried to emulate that. And whenever I would get riled up, I would hear his voice. Cavanaugh. But I always thought, what on earth do you have to say to kids in the hood, men in the hood, to say, come up off my son's bike or else? I don't even want to know what that conversation was like. All I knew is that bike showed up back up at my house. Never, ever had a problem with, and I thought, wow, it's a cool memory of being protected, of feeling protected, because that bike should have been gone.
He was in the military.
He was in the military.
Which one?
I think my dad was Army.
Army.
Yeah.
You know what he did?
I do not know.
Not sure.
I think he was, at one point I remember, I knew he was MP. I knew he was a military police. Yeah, but that's the extent of it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, sometimes my past guests have divulged dark periods in their lives throughout their adolescence.
Yeah.
And to the point to where, it's gotten about as dark as it can get. Okay. Anything like that come up for you by chance throughout those years?
When I think about my young, I'm trying to really go back. Like I said, if it were not, I want to be very clear that there was nothing about me that was off limits for me having those types of experiences. And I think you remove one piece of my puzzle and I'm easily there, because the environment says, based off the environment, that I can easily go left.
Yep.
But there was a piece that was an anchor that kept us in place.
Your family.
Let's start at the top. My great-grandmother.
Great-grandmother.
It was top down. Yeah. How she moved us, we went, and things, there was no, hey, I'm going to do my own thing. No, we moved as a family. And so you think about it like that. You take my father out of the piece, even though he and my parents weren't together, his presence, the bike, picking me up from school, him walking in, and he'd walk in to pick up a report card and I would have to duck underneath the door. And I remember that you could see the kids' faces as they would literally, I remember the faces as they tried to process, why is Hodor coming through coming into our classroom? Who is this giant?
Big dude. Yeah.
It's those, you remove that from the equation, you have different things. I think like most kids, they probably had the things that they wrestled with, going to college and navigating that. But I think those pieces, they just kept me grounded, Greg. And it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
You see people working their tails off to make sure that you haven't, and I always knew, I think that's something I always knew that their sacrifices were setting me up for a better life. And I wasn't going to do anything. That, like, I would go over, like I told you, going back and forth between my house
and
my great-grandmother. I would go to my great-grandmother's house, Greg, and I would clean it from top to bottom almost every time I went over there. Almost every time. Because there was never a repayment method that I could give this woman for what she had done. Forget just me. She raised my mom, my uncles, my grandpa, other family members. There was no payment amount that I could do. So when I stayed at her place, I picked up trash every day. I never let her place become disheveled, even though it was on a corner and people would drop stuff or try to hang out.
Yeah.
I never let her place look like it wasn't cared for or loved, cutting grass, picking up, cleaning up broken stuff. But also when I went over to her house, this is one of the ways, not only about how I'm trying to live as a young person coming up, but I'm just I want to see the smile on your face that comes from you coming up front and sitting in a completely clean kitchen or clean front room or kitchen where I would cook for her. Without those pieces, Greg, and without the faith that they instilled in me early that I picked up and had to carry later on in life, man, my life, I don't know where my life would be. And that's just being honest. And so not me, but the sacrifices of those men and women. That's why the outcome, I would say, early is different, or my experiences weren't drastically different.
Yeah, the likelihood of success is 80% based on environment. 80 or one of those 80% is a number that has to do with your success, and it has to do with the environment. And your environment was filled with people that cared.
Yeah.
They all cared.
Yeah. And it extended beyond, the cool thing, it extended beyond my family.
Your teachers.
My teachers. It would be the godfather, the neighbor down the street. They recognized in that young kid, hey, this kid is going to do something. I don't know what it is. And so you'd have people that would pull me to the side when I was trying to figure out my business life. A guy pulled me aside in a pancake house. He passed a couple of years later. But again, that intersection of my life and other people, he saw me flustered. I had missed a meeting with a furniture company. I was still in college. I had just gotten a carpet company to come install carpet for free through like a marketing thing. My friend was like, how the heck did you do that? I asked them if they would come and told them. And so I was meeting with a furniture company and had a flat tire.
Oh, crap.
So I missed it.
Yeah.
And was kicking myself a little bit and like, man, how did that happen? And missed that opportunity. But he saw me. He pulled me to the side. He said, he said, young Cavanaugh, I've been watching you. We've been coming to networking breakfasts for about a year or so now. He said, I just want to take a moment to encourage you. He said, most people will give up right before they have an amazing breakthrough. He said simply, Cav, just don't give up. And college me got it. I think he died maybe 2 or 3 years later.
Don't give up.
Don't give up. He said, most people will find a way to punch through, if they just don't give up.
Yeah.
They give up right before they cross that line, threshold. Yeah, right before that threshold. And I remember him pulling me aside and having that conversation, which made a huge difference.
Who is this? Who's this guy? Like a random.
Morgan Carter. No, that's you can't be reaching the name. The gentleman's name was Morgan Carter. He was a publicist, a PR guy.
Yeah.
In Chicago, really well known. Had a radio program on one of the major stations, something like WVON in Chicago back in the day. So real well known. But as he moved, people knew who he was. And I'd been been invited to a networking breakfast and had met him and some other individuals in that space. And he was one of those guys. Morgan Carter. It's good to say his name.
All these people giving you this impactful advice throughout your years.
Yeah.
Man, what was it like? What was it like dating for you growing up?
Dating, that's interesting. So not having money and trying to date, you have to be super creative. So one of the things I remember when I think about that, I laugh because luckily by this time I had a car. I wasn't trying to take a girl out on a bus. But I'm a smart kid. I was a smart kid. So I found a way, Greg, to be really creative with my dates. And so having a mom, a whole other side story, who was a DJ in college. So my love of music and things came from her. So as a kid, I could go deep into music. And as I got into grammar school and even high school, I could go really deep into music. And I would pick songs for girls.
Yeah.
Just songs that I thought would really align with who they are, what they might like.
Yeah.
And I was, again, I had these amazing women in my family. So I was super selective about, if I was dating someone, they'd have to ultimately meet my people, And so it meant that I was super selective, but then it would be I would do museums and I would do picnics. And when I started to court my wife, I remember having to pull on being broke and then my love of music. I remember taking my wife to my girlfriend at the time in college. I took her to a place that nobody had ever been, so I knew. Man,
for clarity, your girlfriend in college is your wife now.
Is my wife now.
Okay,
So, we met early 18, started dating at 20.
Yep.
And but I remember having to man, this girl's, she's really special. And so I wound up bringing her into a world that I'd found on campus. My roommate, Oliver Ong, who's no longer with us, turned me on to a place called the Music Library. And so to get away from the clutter, hustle, and bustle where you're at the library and you see 5, 10 people you know and you start chatting and studying goes by the wayside, I started studying at the music library at the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. And it was this beautiful oasis that nobody knew about. It's a full building, a full library.
It's great.
Music wall to wall, everything you could think of, listening rooms, pianos, instruments.
What?
And I would just grab...
Free?
Free.
Okay.
Yeah, free.
Yeah.
So I would grab 4 or 5 albums, Greg, book a listening room, and take my homework. And for hours, would listen to John Coltrane or Ella Fitzgerald or McCoy Tyner. Just really, I think that was my jazz phase, super deep jazz phase.
Yeah.
And so dating for me, like when I knew that I'm like, hey, I'm like this girl getting serious. So I would do creative things like that growing up. But then when I got serious about someone, who was my wife, I remember bringing her into that world because that was my own private sanctitude and solitude spot where I would go and not get sidetracked with, hanging out or anything. But when I brought her into that space and asked her for ice cream, I was like, okay, cool, because that's all I had money for. It was ice cream and music. So and somehow that didn't scare her away. And so there it is. But it happened to be very creative.
Yeah.
I thought I was always very genuine in relationships. And so it was what it was.
So you're in college now.
Yep.
Where did you go to college?
I went to the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, Big Ten.
Big Ten.
So
Yeah.
Big Ten school initially went, so I've always, like you, love of cars. My love of cars has been there since I was a kid. So I've always loved that. But what transpired over the years before I got into business was I wanted to go into mechanical engineering.
Really?
So that was the driver behind going to U of I. They're still probably ranked now in the country, number 3 or number 4 in engineering, as an engineering school.
Cool.
So you got your Purdue's, you got your U of I's, Michigan's, it's right there. And so I went there for that. My roommate at the time was Double E, but just business, I could feel the sway of business coming a lot more natural for me and wound up going into that and getting a degree in marketing, a degree in finance, and a kind of a certification in small business studies at the undergraduate level. So,
yeah. So you went to college to essentially study business.
Yeah.
The all-encapsulating term business. What did you do right after that?
Wow, let me take a moment. So right after school, I remember a season, I wound up taking a year out of school to start. I had all these ideas. So coming from this entrepreneurial background, I had all these ideas. I wound up switching from the main campus that was in Champaign-Urbana, so same school, same university system, to the school in Chicago. I wanted to be where the action was. So one school was 2 hours away in a cornfield, and there was that part of me that was starting to move differently, think differently, and I needed and wanted to be near Chicago. So I transferred from this campus to that campus, same university system, same school, to finish out my degrees. And what I remember doing directly after that was I remember taking a temp job. I was in the position of figuring out whether or not I was going to stay in Chicago or move. And I knew coming out of school, I was in that window. And something about, I don't know why, financially wasn't the best move, but something in me said, hey, why go through this whole process knowing that I'm going to possibly be leaving? It didn't seem fair to me to go through this full process. It didn't seem fair to the employer to go down this road knowing 6 months from now I'm likely going to be moving.
Yeah.
As my wife finishes school and things, and we figure.
When did you get married?
September 2000.
No, in relation to when you graduated. What, a year out?
It felt like maybe like a year or so after. Maybe like
so you graduated and then got married a year later.
And then the next year, yeah.
Okay, got it.
It's about a year.
And then you're thinking about moving, so you're not going to do the employment.
Yeah. So I didn't. I wound up going through like one of the agencies that would just place me at a company.
Did you stop the fighting in college?
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
Come on, man.
I did. I stopped after my freshman year. So it's great. I've always been a fighter, man. So it's kind of, but it would be kind of the same stuff.
Has your wife ever seen you get into a fight?
She did actually, and that's
just one.
Just one.
Did you find her in the car crying over the steering wheel? Disappointment?
No. So
you're like, I'm never fighting again.
No, but she actually was privy to one, and it was because someone was like bothering her. They threw things at her car, And
Oh, no.
Just
Oh, no.
throwing bottles at our car.
Bad idea.
Yeah, so that's a whole other story. But yeah.
Okay.
But after that, I was done. I promise you, I was done. I was focused on academics at that point.
That's good. Okay, so then you actually, did you make the move?
We did. We
Yeah.
did. We wound up. So that is probably one of the most interesting parts of our life, and it would set up the back half. And so we moved. I remember I was working at Crane Communications, amazing company, still in existence, beautiful publications. If you're in advertising, there's Ad Age. If you are city specific, there's magazines specific to these different cities. And so I loved working there.
Crane, the books, right?
Yeah, you see,
Yeah, in the back. Oh, like Penguin.
Yeah.
Crane.
Yep.
Same. Okay.
Same.
Got it.
So we were all seeing them there, internationally known, and so I loved working there, being around again all this information. That's so different companies within different magazines within the same company on different floors, synergies bumping off of each other. So I love that, but I had to step away from that. I remember telling them and my family, "Hey, this won't make any sense. All of my friends and family are in Chicago. My work is there. I got to go." Just that feeling again. We all know it. We've all felt it. That feeling that says, hey, there's something else for you to be doing, and you won't know unless you are not afraid to step out and hit the road.
Yes. Yeah, it reminds me, my last podcast guest talked about intuition.
Okay.
He posted a clip specifically, him talking about that. And you've got to listen to it.
You've got to.
And you did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was going to my family and them going, "Hey, you sound crazy. We're all here. You know, your job is here." But I knew there was something in me that said, okay, Chicago's not going anywhere. I can come back. But I've got to do this. If not, I feel like I'm going to be stuck. So we moved to D.C. My wife and I didn't have a car. She had bought an 86 Toyota Corolla. We called her Matilda. We loved Matilda.
Movie.
Great movie. So again, you get it. We called her Matilda. I think it might have even been before that, so I'm not even sure where the name Matilda came from, but for us. But we wound up, I remember us packing up that car, what we had in that car initially, and moving her out there. And you saw this car, and you're like, there's no way this car is going to drive from Chicago to D.C., and it did. And it was our first mode of transportation when we first got there. And we just began to figure life out. But the years that followed were some of the most defining moments of my life. And this is what I mean by that. My wife at the time was in medical school. I'm working for a tech company, and we're at the tail end of the .com. And so companies are crashing, the tech companies are crashing down, and I'm transitioning from this company to a more stable energy company. And the first thing that I remember during that one transition where I'm going from the tech layoffs of the .com to the energy company, I'm working on something for the town I'm in. I'm in Arlington, Virginia. I'm looking at like this request for proposal, RFP kind of thing that I'm thinking about submitting. Didn't really know what I was doing with it, but just trying to figure it out. And in the back, I remember the TV's on, but my periphery doesn't see the TV screen move. It's been like 10 minutes. The screen doesn't move. And finally, I stopped what I'm doing. Like, why isn't the screen moving? And it's 9/11. And so it's zeroed in on the towers, and we're watching that. And after all that starts to transpire, I'm in my building, Greg, and my building sways like a rag doll. It's a tower. The third plane had hit the Pentagon, and I'm less than a mile from the Pentagon. I could look out of my window and see it. And that impact was like a ripple, like we threw a giant rock or a pond into water.
Dang.
That impact, you just felt it, and all you saw for weeks, what you saw after that for weeks, was just a burning building. We all saw it. You know, that fire didn't go down for weeks. And so that was just one of those
Man.
And I don't think I saw my wife for like 2 days after that. They would, the medical personnel were required to stay in the hospitals as they took people from these places. They shuttled people from the Pentagon who were hurt, injured, or killed to different hospitals. I don't think I saw my wife for like 2 days after that. And so that was one of those moments. I was like, man, what just happened? But also in that same vein, we watched at that same time. So it was just a weird stretch. It was 4 years, but the weirdest 4 year stretch. We saw there was an anthrax like someone was mailing anthrax to people,
I remember that.
and people were dying.
Yeah.
So you would watch people do these weird things to try and maneuver, keeping their mail outside all the time. It was a weird thing, but I think the thing that really, in addition, as if the terrorist attacks and being that close didn't hit as close to home as it could. I remember D.C. is a landlocked area, and you would only have one, like we go left and right. I feel like we can run into a Home Depot or something anywhere. It's just around us now.
Yeah.
But in that area, there's only one that's maybe like 10 to 12 minutes away from me. Go to it all the time, just as we're getting settled for little things. I need this. Let me run back over. I need this. I go over there one time, Greg. This might have been Thursday. And I'm just in the parking lot in my car. I'd gone in for another run. I don't even know what it might have been that I went in there for. 2 days later, snipers shot a woman in the same parking lot that I just left 2 days before. Just standing there putting the DC snipers is what they were.
Yeah, I remember that.
Is what they were called.
They were in their cars, right?
They were riding around the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, shooting out of the trunk of their cars through the light.
It's crazy.
And from the same parking lot that I left, like I would go back to DC years upon end, and I would pass this Home Depot, and something in me would respond. My inner would, and I couldn't. It took me years to understand. Oh, I remember what happened here. But I was there all the time, and just thought, man, what am I there on a different day? Anyone? Are they in that one spot at a different time, a different day? Because I was there all the time, and those three experiences made me really have an understanding. This life is not promised to anybody. So you need to kind of pack whatever fear you think you're feeling, man, get over it, because you don't get to say that you get to do this next year or next week or even tomorrow. And so that had a big impact on me.
Yeah. Flip the switch.
Flip the switch.
Turn the fear off. There's no point.
Flip the switch.
Yeah. That reminds me of it's kind of a weird story. I was in my brand new house. Okay. I was at the foot of my bed, with my clothes laid out because I'm going on a quick day-long hunting trip. Okay. I was standing there at the foot of my bed at 3:00 in the afternoon, changing out in this hunting gear, and then I was going to get in my car and go about an hour north on a hunting trip. Okay. I get back around 11 p.m. It's quiet in my house. I turn on all the lights, and I see this hole in my wall in my primary bedroom.
Okay.
I'm thinking to myself, who's in here?
Yeah.
So I'm sketched out. I scan the whole house. No one's inside. No one's outside. I'm thinking to myself, what the heck happened? So then on the other side of the wall, I see another hole. Hole here, hole there.
Yeah.
And then on the couch, there's a bullet. A bullet laying on the couch. Yeah. And then I look at my wall from the exterior of the house. The bullet came in from the top wall, because in the back of it is this huge chunk of land where these people shoot their guns. And apparently in my neighborhood, one of my buddies who lives there, they shot his solar panels. They just terrible shots. I don't know what they're doing, if they're drinking beer or what.
Yeah.
The fact is, I was standing in that exact same space where the bullet entered.
Wow.
So between that window of time I was gone is when it came through. Like, imagine if I was standing there in my house, my bedroom, like that's where it came through. It's crazy. Seriously, right there. So, yeah. It's little reminders like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Don't take things for granted.
That's deep.
Live life to the fullest.
That's a deep story.
No fear. Yeah.
And it's not about that. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be afraid.
Just do it anyways, though.
What's the old, in my younger years, I used to be a big motivational guy. And so we used to follow all of them up until maybe like college, where I was like, okay, now I need to be the one driving my own. But Les Brown used to have a quote that still echoes in my head. Sometimes you got to be willing to climb up on the roof and just kick the ladder away. There's something about that I just absolutely love hearing.
Les Brown.
Yeah, Les Brown, back in the day. Just remember, hey, sometimes just get up there and figure out how you descend. How do you find the solution later? Because if you sit and think about it 1,000, you'll psych yourself out. You won't do it. No, that's not for me. And then you'll kick yourself for the remainder of your days because you just weren't willing to be a little bit afraid or uncomfortable. And that's another big one. No one wants to be uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to be uncomfortable. So it's like, that's another big one. You got to get uncomfortable.
A lot of people wait to make the right decision while the high achievers make the decision and then make it the right one. Yeah. You shouldn't do that in all cases, though.
Right.
Like, you should wait to marry somebody.
That's a good one. That is a very good example. You might want to say that again. There are a lot of people that might need to hear that.
Yeah. Disclaimer. Read between the lines. Okay. So, all right. So you get married.
Yeah.
Some pivotal moments happen over in the D.C. area.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you live out there?
We lived there for 4 years. And I remember telling my family, my son is born, and my first son's
born. It's a big deal.
Born in that time period. So the whole time, my mentality was, hey, I am going to be moving back in 4 years. Again, my wife, we made the decision to move based on a question my wife asked me. So my wife was going into residency, medical school. And she actually asked me, and this is one of the beautiful things I loved about her. She actually asked me, because there were two options, the Chicago option and the D.C. option. And she asked me, before we made final decisions, where would you like to be? Now, the natural, probably almost seems like the obvious answer would have been Chicago. All my family, all my friends, and my employment is there.
Yeah.
I made the decision that we were not going to stay. She asked me, because I knew for her the best possible situation to get into at Georgetown, to match a school, and they like you, out of all the people in the country and the world, they picked this 5, and you're one of those 5. Something in me was like, nah, whatever you want to do. And I remember the feeling very early during that season that, felt like God was nudging me, going, hey, everything that you've dreamed about and you want to do is going to happen, but I need for you to get behind this and push. And a lot of folks don't understand that part about me, that early story, that I had the opportunity to stay in the city that I loved, around people I loved, and you name it. And I chose to make a sacrifice for our family because it would have meant something amazingly better for her.
Mm-hmm.
That ultimately down the road, it might have meant something better collectively for my family. I felt that I would have grown. I felt like as a brand new couple, we would have grown. And I kind of got this nudge, this assurance. God's like, don't worry about it. I got you,
Yeah.
But right now, just push.
And look where you're at now.
Yeah.
She got that incredible opportunity here in the greater Austin area.
Greater Austin area.
She's one of one.
She's
right?
one of one in Austin. Yeah. That's very
amazing.
Cool. And we've always done this seesaw kind of thing. So our stay in Chicago last time was because I was helping to run a town of about 50,000 people, which is just another awesome, amazing experience. And then once that ended and this cycle through for her, it was a no-brainer. Hey, cool. Thank you for letting me have an impact on the Chicago area and the community. Now let's look at Texas. Yeah, let's look at Texas.
Man, that's freaking cool. So looking back at your life, take the years, take the experiences, the moves, the kids, the wife, the fights, everything, all the stuff, the good, the bad, everything in between. What would you do differently?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. I think that the one that comes to mind the most is I wish that I wouldn't, as we talked about this, I wouldn't have analyzed things as much as I did early, because by nature, I'm very strategic. And so I will sit down and I'll break and I'll look at the strategies and the angles of it. And so there are those times where I spent more time than I should have trying to strategize the best way. When I find myself doing that now, I kind of smack myself, wake out of it.
Be the decision maker now.
Be the decision maker.
Flip the switch.
Flip the switch.
Get the momentum. Go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get the momentum. There's enough experience behind you that knows, like, even with the transitioning back and forth, there was no blueprint for that. Besides, I had to check with my family to see, okay, they're supporting this. They want me to do it, because I would have never left. I'm not going to leave my wife, but then spending a year, one kid was going off to college. So I know I'd see him 2 to 3 months out of the year, but it was my youngest. Not over when spent a year talking. I deferred and spent a year. Are you okay? I needed to make sure that he was going to be okay if I was even going to consider this. If you would have said, Dad, I need you here today, right now, every day, I'd be here. I would have been here. But knowing that everyone was as okay as you can be in that stretch allowed me to go, flip the switch, let's do this, and then how do I model this for them? So moving a lot quicker. The other thing I would think, man, as men, there's a lot of stuff that men don't know. There's a lot of stuff we don't know as it relates to being someone's partner, being someone's dad. There's no playbook for it.
Nope.
And you are just taught. And a lot of times, guys, we come into this life with these big gaping holes that we don't even realize are there. We're just plodding along in life thinking that we got something figured out. And there's that hole there. It's just kind of lingering around. And I think even within myself, I remember kind of coming to that point. There was a point up until engagement and marriage, I felt very immature. Just, what are we talking about? What life? You mean you want to spend the whole life together?
Your 20s, though.
Right, your early 20s. But women are always, from what I've seen, even my wife has always been ahead of the curve. Now, maybe that's a woman trait. Like they just, I think I've heard it or seen it said that women are just, they're more mature than us at an earlier age. And so, there were aspects of my life that I was just kind of like, nah, I'm cool with just being boyfriend and girlfriend. My wife was like, yeah, I'm trying to move forward and build a real life.
I wonder what the biological drivers are there, if there are any,
I don't know.
If it's the girls wanting their natural sense to want safety, right? We're more bold and we're like, we want to experience, experiment, build. Maybe, who knows? Maybe that delays.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Who knows?
I don't know what it is. But I think
where's the psychologist at?
Yeah, we need them in there.
Bring them in.
But I think that was one of the things. But once I got to the point where I knew, okay, this is the woman, and I made that move to propose, and then the switch hit. And I remember feeling the switch within me go, this person is now my priority. And if there is a family party or a family event, it comes now after my priority to this woman or to this person. And so that is one of those things. Just kind of, I think young men, and that's why I'm really big with my sons. They hear me talk. Greg, my mouth is always running with them. They're like, oh my gosh, this old man is about to kind of hit me with another one of these old crabapple horse stories again. But it's important because life, again, the goal for me was when you leave my house, I've got to make sure that your toolbox is full enough, not completely full. It's impossible. Full enough so that you can start working on life and not have life just work on you, because it's going to come at you in waves.
Yeah. Plus, if it comes back on them, they're going to be calling your phone every day.
Yep. Exactly. For you, like, but it's that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Being a dad. Yeah. You really got to be selfless, like beyond belief. I don't think I can't comprehend what it's like to be a parent. I think you've just got to do it. It's the only way to really get an understanding for it. Because it's the biggest commitment a man will make. With marriage, sad to say, they don't always work out. But with being a dad, though, it's lifelong.
It's lifelong.
That's it. Yeah, it's a big deal.
And if I can make a point,
go ahead.
For guys particularly, one of the things I've noticed is that guys, we don't realize how much, and I talk to people all the time around this because I've been the day in, day out dad up until the back and forth where I was here for a week, gone for several days. But men don't realize how much of their identity is tied up in their own dad. Women want to have an idea. You're trying to figure out what the guy is like that you're either dating or with or understanding. Take a look at their pop. Take a look at their dad. But a lot of men don't really understand how much of their identity is wrapped up into this other human being that they call dad. And sometimes it's a good situation, or it's one like the guy I just met about a month ago. He said, I had my first full day hanging out with my dad, and I was 40, and that hurt. And I took my son to this event, and he heard that. And I was like, did you hear that grown man say that he first sat down with his father who left the family, just left, at 40? I don't even want to imagine what that pain might have been like, all those years of not feeling wanted or not being poured into or not being talked to or whatever But I think that is a big thing too, that just guys we don't realize how much of us is wrapped up in that individual.
Yeah, energy. I think energy is one of the most precious gifts that we get and get to give in life. We talk about it all the time on the show.
Okay.
And I think energy from one parent, both parents, is extremely important. And simply, mostly because of comparison, I'd say, because you see other people, other kids getting that.
Yeah.
Right? If nobody had a dad, you probably wouldn't hurt as bad. Right? But if again, I'm not a biologist or psychologist. Anyways, yeah. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What would you say the greatest gift in life is, from your perspective?
So for me personally, I can say that the foundation of my faith has been my cornerstone. It has been that rock that, if without it, that I could see over life as life got hard or life changed, things would have started to erode. But I want to move off of that. I think when I think about my own life, Greg, man, my life has been kind of outlined by being, and I didn't recognize this early until I got into my own manhood, where I realized my life I was being used as a bridge. So I have an ability, I hope, or at least someone told me, Cavanaugh, you have a unique ability to sit across the table from anyone and find commonality. And it wasn't until I heard that I started to process that, like, man, you're right. I've been in some very interesting, diverse situations with people from completely different backgrounds, totally different, and somehow, so I feel like my life has been used as a bridge. And I think the thought or the concept that keeps coming back to me is from an old movie that I love, It's a Wonderful Life. So I'm an old man at heart. And there's a scene in there from one of the angels overseeing George Bailey, the main character. And he says that each man's life is connected to the other, that when they're not around, the quote's not perfect, but when they're not around, it leaves an awful hole. And I think about all the people that on my journey, that if you move them out of my equation, what my personal deficiencies or holes would have looked like, because my life at one point was connected to the men at the gym who took an interest to want to see me better my health, or it was the mentors that came into my life that encouraged me, that looked out for me or taught me, and so on and so on. So I think each man's life, we don't realize how much we have in common and how much more connected we are. And that is it's always been a big driver for me.
Human connection.
Human connection.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the big picture now. Okay. You've got a ton of wisdom through life experience and academics.
Yeah.
It's your aim to help a lot of people, especially the entrepreneurial folks out there, and you do. What's the message for the world?
What I've seen since we my perspective that's changed, Greg, since we've come out of the pandemic, was now we're all thrust into this madness and we're forced to see the world differently, figure things out differently. I remember I used to love going into Costco. I can count on one hand now since the pandemic how many times I've been into Costco, because now someone will bring Costco to my door.
Yeah.
It's just life. And so
Instacart.
It's kind of like, this is fantastic. You're like, I could have been doing this before. So
good.
So those things, what has happened, what I've seen is that I've adjusted and changed my outlook, and my global picture has gotten bigger, my global outlook. Whereas before I might have been comfortable, like, man, I'm doing a lot within the States. Now, by the nature of the blurring of lines caused by the pandemic and communications allowing us to connect and the different ways in which we can connect, the world has gotten a lot smaller for me. We used to say that a lot. We used to always, the world's gotten smaller. Now it feels like the world has gotten a lot smaller. It's a lot easier to reach out across the globe and to touch. And so that's impacted my outlook. There's an upcoming trip. I have to figure out if I'm going to do it, but a business partner is like, hey, you need to come with me to China. Whereas before I was like, no, I'm not going. I got a family here and I got stuff to do and I want to hang out. And now I'm like, okay, I see where there's an opportunity, or, and this is just another part. I got an opportunity to speak at a university in, Morocco. And it's through another business partner. And I, again, just didn't do it. I was not about to add something onto my plate. after being back and forth from Chicago. I was like, nah, it's just not going to work. You're just like, that's when you know. But I think my global outlook has changed. And I think that will be a big defining factor as I look to engage with entrepreneurs and startups and advise. It will be, what does that global perspective look like as I continue to do some of the same things? I think that's that's the big piece that personally I feel like I've come out of the last few years with.
And what kind of impact will you make with that new perspective?
I think the one thing that I'm really seeing is that how you impact business. So if we saw businesses making mistakes prior to, and then we saw the storm of the pandemic roll in and do the Three Little Pigs number on it, we got the stick, straw, and brick. The stronger, more well-established companies withstood the storm. Yeah, they might have lost a roof or some dust might have been kicked from in front of them, but the stability of the business stood. And so they might have took a downturn or a dip. But when that rebound came, they were pretty much sitting pretty again. They kind of rebounded back. One of the things that I am focused on doing is when I look at management for small businesses, it's a focus on, you can have a great idea, but do you have the right people and do you have the right systems, as you mentioned earlier, or processes in place to help you pull that off? The problem that used to happen in the past, Greg, was that businesses would start and they would have to almost organically pull all these things together. Okay, I have this idea that I think works and I need to battle test it, but I really don't have an advisory board. I don't have a tech driver. I don't have a salesperson. They were all those people. But now you can't really move ahead with a killer idea unless your team is in place. So now how do you help companies build quality teams and quality systems around these great ideas? And now that we've seen the implementation of AI and robotics and things like that, the heavy lifting can easily be done where a business doesn't even have to think about something that they might have struggled with before. So how do you introduce that into the space? You move over to marketing.
Because it should be introduced into the space.
It should
right?
be.
That's why we're asking in the first place.
Exactly.
It should be there.
It should be
okay.
there. And so now introducing these new, very simple turnkey solutions into what would have been a problem before, that will launch or catapult a business light years. Instead of spending a year or two figuring out how to put this piece together, it's almost plug and play these days. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
You saw a machine mixing drinks.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember watching machines that they were selling for $50. I was in Chicago, machines, warehouse forklift machines, AI-driven, sensor-loaded, fork-driven machines. They would map your warehouse.
Yeah.
And the things would just go and pick up pallets and move them and drop them off. So now you're talking about salary gone for a one-time cost. No salary, no benefits for this machine that just drives around your warehouse. You're going to see a lot more introduction. Yeah, you're going to see tons more introduction of those small, like you saw the robot serving drinks. I've seen a bunch of applications. I saw a robot serve me a soda.
Yeah.
He just reached in the refrigerator, pulled it down, put my order in, reached in, dropped it on the thing, and then his little robotic arm just pushed it down the thing to me.
So for lack of a better term, it's how can we get these businesses up with the times?
Yeah. That's the big thing. So the big part of what I'm doing right now is looking at each individual silo for businesses. So if you're telling me your pain point is around management, I know that we're talking a people or a process issue. Okay, what can you introduce into the space that takes up some of that heavy lifting and makes your life easier, does the work more cost effectively and efficiently? Now, if you tell me it's marketing and you know that you have, and this is usually the case, you know that you have a line item budget for marketing, and then, the numbers, you can look all over the place for numbers. It might be 10,000 depending on small businesses. Now you have to make sure that every dollar is kicking out some kind of return, where you can't just willy-nilly go, okay, I'm just going to throw this against the wall and think that it sticks. No, you don't have to. Now we have more instruments and more tools and more research and data that says if you're going to use it, put it in this channel and watch very carefully on the return on investment of that. There's just no, I spent my budget and there's no excuse for that. There's now tools and platforms that help you to start to drill down into that, and they're cost efficient.
Well, you got one in mind by chance? I mean,
let me think of one. There's so many. I just came from the vid, but I'm really taking them on to think. I'm going to think about one. like something simple that I've seen recently has been AI translations.
Tell us about that.
So if you are a company that does global work, I'm just trying to think of a major electronic. Give me a major electronic.
Samsung.
Samsung. Let's say you operate now globally all over the world. Let's say you were Samsung starting just from day one, and you still had a killer international product. Whereas before, if you can imagine, every country that Samsung had to operate in required that team to make sure that the message that might have been coming out of X, Y, and Z country fits
all the other
countries, and that is even localized. That the language is even localized.
Yeah, because the different dialect and vernacular and things they use.
Greg, I've seen now with the click of a button.
Yeah, boop, done. It's dispersed
around the world.
That's fast. That's high speed. That's efficiency.
It's efficiency. So imagine what that looks like for companies that do need that kind of reach.
Yeah.
That's a huge game changer. But again, we've seen it from just even the robotics aspect. I keep coming back to that because I remember the robotic, watching that one Spindler make drinks years ago, but then seeing the new updated version of the arm. The reading is a little slow, and I'm sure they'll work on that. But I even saw different machines moving at light speed, doing tasks that it take 20 people to do.
It's fired up.
It's fired up and it's coming. The one I saw that really stands out, because I was having a conversation about it, was watching someone talk about the issues that they faced at their car dealership or whatever, like auto repair.
Yeah.
And they talked about, what they had to do to accommodate the different people and the shifts. And then I walked past the machine, Greg, where there's a car there.
Yeah.
And the machine is spray painting the car.
Of course.
Completely.
Of course. Yeah, perfectly. Yeah.
But that's in a turnkey environment that you can slide into the smallest of garages or decent-sized spaces and now be able just to crank out perfect painting. Yeah, perfect product.
So you've got business partners for different business ventures. Or are you an investor in those spaces? Or?
No. So our group, the Entrepreneur Cafe, there are three of us.
Okay.
And so over the years, my role of being the wearer of all hats has shifted to, I'm a strictly strategy person. So business strategy, if you are looking to put an idea into place, you're looking to scale that idea, then I'm looking through the business planning aspects of it, big picture marketing strategy of it, the avenues that might fit best for your business, because it's not all one size fits all, the access to capital issues. You can go 9 different ways for capital these days.
Yes.
And so
it's everywhere.
And then the resources that we talked about earlier. So my stuff lives in there, but then another partner is strictly operations, just an expert whiz, global outlook, expert whiz, and just what does operation implementation look like for companies? And then another that's just digital marketing. So
where are those two dudes?
So they're now, all of us at one point used to be in the same area, but over time we've moved. One is in North Carolina and one is down in Florida.
Okay.
And so, but we're talking, all the time, just working on the what's next, the new projects. So it's cool that you can now all be away from each other.
Yeah.
And things don't skip a beat.
And so that entity is called Entrepreneur.
The Entrepreneur Cafe.
The Entrepreneur Cafe. Yeah, I remember talking with you about that.
Yeah.
Who can you help with Entrepreneur Cafe?
Yeah. So
who would call you all?
So wow, here's what's interesting. Like we talked about this earlier. We're talking about small businesses, and when I say small,
any small business,
again, they should have a very clear problem. And again, if they tell me, hey, what's your biggest pain point? It's usually a question. Yeah. And that question, they'll usually say, hey, we need a little bit more advisory. We need more people to bounce ideas off, or we need to plug this role. Okay, well, that's a very clear management expert, process issue. If they tell you, like I mentioned, that they have a marketing, hey, our marketing is just not hitting the way we need to. So they should have a very clear pain point, and it usually falls into one of those buckets: management, marketing, access to capital, or just I need to connect with this resource that will help take me to the next, and we can kind of figure out the path. And that's the first thing. They should also have a budget in mind. It can't just be an idea of, we have a problem, but we haven't really thought about what this looks like. So we're working with companies that have a very clear budget around marketing. We have $20,000 plus that we're looking to figure out how best to use this to improve our brand. How do we get our brand message out there effectively in the way that we need to be out there? So we do a lot of content stuff. Content is really big for us in terms of in-house, our own content that we put out, but also how do we help people craft their own messages that really communicate their brand out to people? And so that's another one. If you're looking for access to capital, that's a big one. Most people don't realize that we are 1,000 years past the point where I once went into my local community bank in a small town and told the VP that, I'm looking at an investment property
Here's
in
my
Chicago.
business plan.
No, I didn't.
Whatever. Like, I don't
No,
even...
I didn't give him that.
Yeah.
I said, I want to buy a condo in Chicago. And his question was, do you have the money for it? I said, yes. There was no vetting.
Oh.
It was a handshake deal.
Yeah.
We're so far beyond.
Oh, gosh. I never even heard of anything like that. Okay.
That's what community banks did. They were just those, you built relationship. We built relationship on the first house. I kind of came into Chicago, saw this area of the city that was coming up, and you're like, man, this place used to be run down. This is going to be a gold mine.
Yeah.
And just came back to my college town 5 hours away and was like, hey, I'm thinking about this. Would you be interested in doing a deal up there? So I don't have to kind of go through finding a lender in Chicago. And it was pretty much a trust you handshake kind of deal. Without the handshake, just I trust you. So we're so far past the community bank or your traditional bank that people need to understand that there are different avenues in which to access capital. And so we can kind of help narrow that down, narrow the path down, and help them find the funds that they need to scale and grow their business. And then the last one, like I mentioned, was just resources. People, you could have the resource that we need, Greg, can be right across the street from us. If we don't know that they're there, what they do and how they could benefit us, I've watched tons of businesses miss simple opportunities because you just didn't know that what you needed was right there. So pretty simple.
Would you call it a consulting firm?
We're a consultant.
You're a consulting firm.
Startup consultancy advisor to startups.
You're doing that. Also, you're professing.
So I stepped away from adjunct professor to run the town of Downers Grove, to help run the town with some other amazing individuals years ago. So this ended about 2019. So I went from the university into the role as a commissioner of this 50,000 person town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that part I put down to pick up the local government, but while still in the startup space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So here's a fun question. Yeah. Okay. I only got just a couple more questions.
No, that's why I love this, man. This is fantastic.
What are you the best at? It can fall under any category you want.
I think I want to move it out of the business space because I asked someone this question the other day.
Anything.
Someone called me about their next moves, work related. Their company was kind of downsizing, and they're 2-3 months out from making the switch. And that was one of the questions I asked them. I said, "What is it from a core competency perspective that you do? If they had to look on you just on paper, look at you and some other folks on paper, that makes you stand out more than anyone else." I think, man, it is my heart for people. If I had, when I say that, I really, truly, it really resonates and hits with me, even as I hear myself say it. You don't have to ever prove yourself to me. You don't have to show me that you're successful. You don't have to have it all together. Again, I worked in an environment where I worked with the hardest population in what it felt like in the world. So I won't say in the world, but definitely say I worked with homeless families for a number of years. And none of those individuals ever had to come to me together because their life wasn't together. They never had to prove anything to me. They never had to do anything for me. I think my true heart and my true love for people allows me to just see folks exactly where you are and actually to see into people. And that can be scary too, because no one likes to be seen through or transparent. But my background in my life allows me to see people exactly where they are. And I can accept you and love you right there. And if there's any skill, forget business or anything else I've done, that part, the human part, is what I think I'm most proud of, I think.
Dang. Yeah. As you're talking about that, I'm thinking to myself, yep, that's right. You're great at that.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
It's awesome. It's cool. It's very cool. If you could say a message to your family 100 years from now, if they're going to catch this episode, what would you say to them?
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
What I love about that question, Greg, what's cool about that question is I think about that a lot. And that's what's the crazy thing I think about. And I think about it because I watch people do it for me. And so I now get to talk about till God tells me my time is up, I get to talk about the lady who taught me how to garden.
Yeah.
who showed me love across boundaries, that love extends beyond race or color. And so I get to tell stories of, man, when my great-grandmother's siblings were alive, if one of them went to the store, and there were so many of them, they would buy groceries for every household and spend the afternoon dropping off groceries as they went home. So they went to the store for themselves, but knew that their siblings might want this or that. And they would I would see them, each different ones. And so when my great-grandmother went out, and she's at the market, she's buying for everyone, I think I would love for even my family, because I tell this message to my boys, man, it's at this stage in life, it's not about me. Man, your mother and I, we've had a good life. I feel like I've already lived 2 and 3 lives. I said, and it's less about us. It's more about you and my grandkids. So the work that I'm doing now it might not even have, if I'm honest, it might not really even have much to do with you in the big picture 100-year time frame. But I'm trying to get them to understand, leave something of value behind. And I'm not talking money.
Leave the energy. Leave the energy instilled in others. Leave the message instilled in others.
Leave the values. Leave the hard work. Leave the, there's a reason I have 18 million pictures of my kids. I sent a picture to my son this morning. Well, I usually will have coffee before the house wakes up in this one spot. I call it find the quiet corner. So when I talk about the house is asleep, it might be 5:30, 6 o'clock. I'll go brew my coffee and I'll sit there and I'll think and I'll read. But this morning, a picture flashed up of my son during the Teenage Mutant Ninja years of his life, really small. He comes into my office and he has all his Mutant Ninja Turtles. I wasn't in the office. And he comes into my office and he has all his Mutant Ninja Turtles sitting on the ground, and on my whiteboard, which I turned my door of my office into a whiteboard, this bigger space. He has drawn this whole Mutant Ninja Turtle scene. And it's one of my most favorite memories of that house, that I'll get to share that with him later on as he gets older. I shared it with him today again as reminded. I'm sure he'll be like, that's not me, But I want them, and I want the generations that come after to understand you have an obligation. You have an obligation to leave something for the ones that'll come after you. I think about my great-grandmother all the time, and I could turn any plot of land into a booming market. I've grown everything, and I just remember that woman took the time to lovingly show me how to do that. And then during the pandemic, I've been doing it my entire life. Now I passed on that to my boys. This is how you do it. This is how you start. This is how you lay out. And so just that understanding, Greg, and that idea, we have an obligation to leave something of value. And it's not always going to be financial, but what are we doing right now that sets up the future generations to be in a better position?
Yeah.
That's something I think about a lot.
Powerful question. Yeah.
I love that question.
Yeah. Well, the one that you just said, the question that you had just stated. Yeah. What can you do to set your future generation up, right? It's a great question for everybody to ask themselves.
I was thinking about your initial question, so thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. So let's say somebody, entrepreneurs of the world, want to reach out to you and get some help. How do they reach out?
Yeah, I am super accessible, man. I have stopped on the dime for anyone, because what we're talking about, when people talk about entrepreneurship, and they're really talking about their dreams, if we're honest. We all were somewhere else before we moved into the next thing. So when people are talking about starting a business, I see it as they're thinking about they're bringing their dreams to the table. And so for me, super accessible I'm using LinkedIn these days as a primary access point. You want to reach Cavanaugh Gray, and people shoot me messages all the time. Hey, Cavanaugh, I saw your book. Or, hey, Cavanaugh, are you going to this event or this? Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn primarily. I tell people, Cavanaugh Gray, send me a message via my email, Gmail. CavanaughGray@gmail is a primary one. I'm doing a lot of transitioning things now, coming out of this program, having this money to help work on the problem. I'm integrating a lot of new tech and automation ideas into how businesses are run. And that's going to be fun. That next iteration that we're really close to, we're about 2 months out of really that reiteration, that's going to be cool, because the jumps and leaps and advances in business that we're getting a chance to see and talk to vendors about and bring into our startup space is going to be game changing.
I believe it.
And so individuals that are really trying to figure out, hey, how do I move this awesome idea forward? How do I overcome some of these obstacles and navigate the landscape of entrepreneurship better? And I tell them all the time, hey, reach out to me on LinkedIn. It is the best way to reach me. I don't even go to events anymore with business cards because people are tapping their phones together or scanning codes on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Kind of another post-pandemic thing I've seen.
Well, folks, holy smokes, what a ride.
It's fun.
What a ride. It's 1:30. We started at 11.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea.
2.5 hour podcast.
This is, Greg, this is fantastic.
Tore it up. Nice job.
Man, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. The people in your sphere are lucky to have you there.
Man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Folks, you heard it here first. We got Cavanaugh Gray. Hit him up on LinkedIn if you're a entrepreneur and are hitting a wall and want some help. He'll put some rocket fuel in your business.
Yeah.
Greg Carlson, the Austin Elite Podcast. Till next time, everybody, stay fired up.
Thank you.